Yeah, Monsignor Albert Royo Mejia is the promoter of the faith in the dicastery for the causes of the saints. His current function is, in fact, the same one that was formerly performed by the so-called devil's advocate
Right.
in the canonization processes. This was pre-1965, pre-Vatican II. Okay? So when and why was this name changed from promoter of the faith to the devil's advocate? Who exactly, in effect, is the devil's advocate? Well, Monsignor Royo, who holds a doctorate in canon law and is a priest of the Diocese of Getafe in Spain, where he's been the judicial vicar, Episcopal delegate for the causes of saints, and pastor of Our Lady of the Assumption Parish in the town of Parla, South Madrid, Father Monsignor Royo explained that the name Devil's Advocate is actually a popular designation since Pope Sixtus V. Father Monsignor Royo says in a civil or criminal proceedings, it would be what we more or less know as the prosecutor, the one who has to search for the truth in a special way, because here the only thing we're looking for is the truth, as in every proceeding, as in every investigation, Father Royo emphasizes. The Spanish priests thus defined the canonization process as an investigation whose objective is to discern the will of God about a candidate for the altars. The priest explained that in his discernment, quote, it is essential that someone helps search for the truth, because sometimes, due to excessive affection, devotion, distraction, or other types of reasons, the candidate can be presented in an inappropriate way because research or historical documentation are missing. And it's because all peoples have defects. There is no saint who does not have any defects. For these defects to come to light and be investigated, the promoter of the faith, or the ancient title, the devil's advocate, whose figure emerged when Pope Sixtus V established the Roman Curia, is indispensable. However, the Spanish priest said that today he is no longer called devil's advocate, but rather the prelate theologian. He continues to call himself a promoter of this faith, but the popular designation is no longer that of the devil's advocate, although the idea is the same. And by the way, Terry, I'm cool with the change of that name, because I know, again, a lot of times I agree with some of the traditional authors like Michael Davies and others and their arguments. Yeah. And I'm saying, wow, that was fairly well argued. But when I hear somebody will say, no, we should call it the devil's advocate. I like that name. I don't really care for it. It's the same function. Promoter of the faith is the same function as the devil's advocate, but as a Catholic, I'm kind of glad that name was changed. I don't want the term devil in anything that has to do with an office of the church.
I was just going to say, why give him credit for his name? You don't know.
Yes.
No.
So on that instance, those that would argue, a lot of my trad friends that would argue, and I consider myself a traditional Catholic, but I'll say, no, on that one, you're wrong. I just disagree with you. Yeah. I think that's a good idea that we're calling it the promoter of the faith instead of the devil's advocate. Again, because I think a lot of times amongst Catholics, people, they make mountains out of molehills.
That's right.
This is making anybody who says we should continue calling that person the devil's advocate, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. I would just say in Scripture, where's that in Scripture? Show me in Scripture where that office is at in Scripture.
Yeah.
We'll continue.
This is where 1984.
Go ahead, do it. Read it.
1984, Pope John Paul II introduced a series of reforms to facilitate the canonization process and bring the system more in line with modern times. According to the promoter of the faith, this was done by natural evolution of the process, since over the centuries, the process had become increasingly legal, and nonetheless, the need was seen to also make it historic, since it was very similar to what the marriage annulment process or any other process in the church was like. In fact, he noted, for centuries, the work that the relator do today, which is relator to do today, which is a new figure that John Paul established, was done by the auditors of the rota, which between the process of canonization, the process of the Roman Rota, it's a tribunal, there was very little difference. Royal further explained that with the development of historical sciences, the need was to develop into historical context of the causes. Of the development of psychological sciences also had a lot of influence. The psychology of a servant of God, of a candidate for the altar, influences the person. All of this was not taken into account before, the priest explained. For this reason, a series of figures came into play who are today, for example, the relators, he said. Continue, Jess.
Yeah. It says the relator is an intermediate figure between the diocesan phase, the material that arrives in Rome, and the study done by the promoter of the faith. The very valuable work of the relators is to prepare the cause. They already see the difficulties, the problems, and what must also be highlighted in each servant of God. According to Monsignor Royo, the relators systematize the work, and when it reaches the promoter of the faith, that's a new title, and therefore the theological consultants, the cause is already very refined and very prepared. This has greatly expedited the causes, he pointed out, since without this figure, the process was like a very tight funnel in which the causes were stuck, but only the promoter of the faith was in charge of studying them all.
Go ahead, Terry. If I could just add this, Jesse, after you read this, think about in the old days. When I talk about the old days, I'm talking about when St. Francis of Assisi was around. It took 4 years after his death that he was canonized, but there was no real process back then. It was the popular of the people. The people wanted him to be, they started calling him saint, and so the church said, okay, well, the will of the people. And so this was, then it was developed, and then what I thought was very fascinating is if you think about St. John Paul II, he changed the process where, think of he canonized more saints in his pontificate than any other pontiff in the history of the church. And I want to just bring this other point up, Jess, and I'll turn it back to you. Fulton Sheen, I keep talking about Fulton Sheen's beatification. And you see, there's still, in the past, it would take a longer time. But if there are people in Rome who don't want to see someone become a saint, they can stall the process until another group comes in to reignite it. And I think that's what's going to happen with Fulton Sheen.